a day old hamburger bun?
I'm alright. How'd it go down there?
You know what the problem is with everybody? They all just want to hear what they already believe. No one ever wants to hear the truth.
Damn.
Dust settles in a haze of blue. Still half asleep from what you put me through. It's like I'm dreaming, but my eyes be awake. I'm still riding on this bullshit, I'm used to it. I think the talk is cheap when you take a hit, and now I'm flying. Take it all from me. Take it all from me. I see you with that savage.
I had no idea if this is focused. So we're just gonna go with yes and hope for the best because I'm not restarting. Yeah. I could make this whole thing like just about me and my experience in quarantine and my overall thoughts on the shitstorm that 2020 is, but it would literally be 10 minutes because I do the same thing every day. And I'm not someone who fleshes my thoughts out so well normally. I have to like sit there and actually think about it. And I figured rather than doing that, because it would probably take me a whole year to want to write something that I actually like, record something that I actually like and agree with when it's coming from me. So I figured I would, ask other people who I know are going through similar things or who've had generally the same experience or similar experience that I have had in 2020 in general. Tried to gather as many people as I could in such a short time frame. And I didn't want to do everything through FaceTime just because that's so impersonal. And I honestly don't know how to work the internet properly. If this even gets made, I'll be really impressed with myself. But yeah, I just got a handful of people that I knew I could, have access to readily. And I wanted to gauge, their thoughts on 2020. Because I know for myself even, if there's one thing that quarantine has allowed for is introspection. Because I just have so much time to myself. Just having that time to yourself, I want to know if that's really impacted people. Have people grown? Or have they felt like they've stayed stagnant? I think these past couple months have been just so important in history. And just on an individual level. So, here's me asking my friends. I wish I could have gotten more people, but this would have been an hour long and people's attention spans are not that great. Mine definitely isn't, so yeah.
Yeah. I just want to talk about mind control.
I feel like for you it was much harder just because you were alone and not associating, I guess, with society or talking to anybody. I feel like that must have gotten to you.
See, here's the thing though, is that if the whole moving thing wasn't a part of the equation, I actually enjoyed not having like, it's like not having the need to go out and socialize, like, if that makes sense. Like, I enjoy myself, like, by myself. So I kind of enjoyed it a little bit because it kind of took the societal pressure of, like, oh, you should be, like, going out and, like, socializing, stuff like that, because no one was allowed to. So it kind of was, I liked it. I personally liked it for at least the first month. Then it started getting a little bit lonely. But, like, FaceTime and stuff like that helped, so.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it could be a time for introspection. But
yeah.
Was that at all, like, something that you experienced?
I think for me, just because, like, finishing the semester, packing up was on my brain, I didn't have much time to think about anything else, and maybe that's why I didn't really take the time for introspection or anything like that.
What about after school, though?
Well, after school, I, like, came back home, right? And then I was surrounded by people. So I never experienced a time completely alone during quarantine where I wasn't busy. Because when I wasn't busy, I was around people because I had come back home by then. So to the other question of, like, the larger lesson, I think I was wrong in saying that I didn't learn anything about myself or just in general, because I just realized that my mentality, and I think many people's mentality, is usually, like, to look very far into the future, being like, okay, I need to be here in a year, so what do I need to do to get there? Or I need to be here in, like, I want to be here in my life in 5 years, so this is what I'm going to do. My, like, scope of what I was looking to into the future shortened so much just because everything was so uncertain. I was like, okay, up until May 1st, I know what I'm doing. After that, I'll deal with, like, I'll care about that later. But, like, my window of the future shortened extremely. It was very short term. It wasn't long term anymore, which I think was actually a good thing, because we have a tendency to, like, think too far into the future that we forget about what needs to be done. Like, the shorter term goals and shorter term actions that need to be taken.
Yeah.
Hey, shawty come sit on my lap. Hey, they saying Drizzy just snap. This in between us is not like a store. This isn't a closable gap. Hey, I see some niggas attack and don't end up making.
Oh wait, let me take the mask off.
Okay, when you first heard that schools were shutting down, how did you feel about that in terms of having to transition to online school? Like, did you ever expect that to happen?
Well, studying abroad in London, LA.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like, yo, just kind of blessed. I can do it online. I can do all my schoolwork on the laptop when I'm on a plane to Vienna or something, or like do it in Prague, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to stay in London. So I was like, yo, bet. But then, like, I had to fly back and I was stuck in my room. So I was like studying abroad at home. So I'm like, what the fuck? I might as well. Can I swear?
You already did.
I was like, okay, I was like studying abroad at home in my room, and it was just like, at this point, why did I even go abroad and spend all this extra money, you know what I mean? But, you know, I'll admit, you know, considering it was a pandemic, unprecedented event, I think the schools generally did a decent job at adapting to that. Mm-hmm. This is my better side.
So have you felt like just complacent in all of this? Like, or has it led you to just, like, sometimes sit back and think about, like, how different life is now? Or is it just, like, so normal for you now, that because it was such a gradual thing?
I think it's I don't want to be a meme, but I think it's a cultural reset.
Really? Why?
Honestly, 2020, like, so much has changed, like, this year. Like, even, like, regardless of Corona, obviously that's the big one, but a lot of other stuff has been going on, like, that I did not expect. I'm talking, like, celebrity death, very sad. I'm talking...
Do you have any conspiracy theories, or do you think COVID is a real thing?
No, COVID is definitely a real thing. Like, wear a fucking mask, but it does suck for sure. But at the same time, I mean, maybe this is what we needed. Because, like, you know, like, emissions are down, air is getting cleaner, especially in, like, LA and China and all of these, like, populated cities.
I hit it slow, right by the morning, girl. I gotta go, gotta get ready. Tonight is my show. If you okay, you might open my show. Gotta be partners right under my nose. These niggas bags, I can't look down. These niggas bags, I gotta look down. Changing my style, cause I gotta be fly. Gotta be going on top of my.
Yeah, so I went to the farmer's market yesterday with a friend of mine. And see, we had our dog and everything. The dog is huge.
So what were your initial thoughts on the quarantine lockdown?
Well, initially to me, like, it's always that kind of lifestyle that where you're not running anywhere, you're more relaxed, you're taking everything like on your own pace has always been my lifestyle. It's always been the lifestyle I've actually preferred. So when COVID happened, there was really no difference. It was more kind of like other people's reactions to that, and how like a lot of people who've always, you know, these are people who would want to go on vacation and they dreamed of having to do less work and all that, and how they coped with it was very interesting. I've always used technology just for work. I'm not someone who goes on and watches movies. I'm not someone who really goes on YouTube and stuff like that. So like using the laptop was always for work anyways. And that might have increased by maybe like 4 hours in the week compared to normal. So I wouldn't say I became more dependent on it. It created a chain where I had to rely on other people, which is, I guess, the biggest change with tech. So.
Look at him. He's like creeping up on it, ready to chase it. And mission failed.
The show's been over for 4 years, and then the fans are still rabid. They still love the show. They're like, damn, this show is going to inform all the decisions I ever make ever. And then so the TV show, they're like, although we are no longer a TV show on a TV network, what we will do is film a 20-minute scene and post it on YouTube. You know, it's like a reunion. It's like, oh, 4 years later, and it goes trending on Twitter and YouTube. This is that.
I love that.
Yeah,
I know, man.
Drive-thrus are also a thing more now.
Man. And they were made for left-handed people. They weren't made for people who are like right-handed like me. Anyways.
How do you like feel about, you're going to masters, but how do you feel about, you know, curriculum being online?
Well, I finished my undergrad in 2019, took the year off, really found myself, you know, and so now it being online, I think the worst part about school being online is that it doesn't feel like school. Like, school isn't just about learning, it's about community, building community and learning amongst your peers, your community, and I feel like that part has been taken out. And I think ultimately they'll be fine in like delivering a curriculum to us digitally, but we're not getting the full experience. Like, if learning was just like processing material, like, why would we have universities on like these spaces? It's so much more than that, right? You get so much from being in sharing space with people and just like being in a room with people who have similar interests to you. It's just, yeah. So I think right now my only qualm is the fact that I'm not going to have a good social experience doing school, and it's not going to feel the same. Like, I don't know. I think the only way education can be enjoyable is if you're amongst other people learning and sharing ideas. So I don't know how they're going to do that online.
Do you feel, it's a little bit of a deep question.
Okay, I'm ready.
But you're good at deep. Do you feel like there's like I guess it's more personal to you, but I'm going to ask it more broadly. Like, do you feel like there's a bigger lesson to 2020 and everything that's going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think the pandemic taught us the importance of being still and like to slow down, and that it's possible. I think when the pandemic when it was in its earliest stages, I think people were so resistant to this idea of like being at home all the time, not working, because we didn't think we had the capacity to like just not be doing things for that long. But I think what I've learned personally is that it is important to have moments of stillness, to slow down. Like, that's the best way you can enjoy life. And we've learned how to be more compassionate to like one another and to ourselves, especially with like this whole like people are choosing to stay at home because they don't feel safe, right? Which is sometimes really hard because being in society feels productive, but we're learning to like value ourselves over like these ideas of productivity. So I think for me, I've just learned how to be more compassionate to myself.
Yeah, this is Albion Heights. Like, I have so many great memories at the school.
What's the best one?
Oh, there's so many. Like, I was talking to my mom the other day, and I was just like, when I was in 3rd grade, I got a poem published from in the book, and it was because my first grade teacher, am I supposed to look at the camera?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, my first grade teacher, she saw something that I wrote and submitted it to like a journal or something, and they published my poem. It was not a good poem, but they published it because they're like impressive for a third grader. And I just remember like, I don't know, we were so young, and the first time I ever experienced like cool things was through these teachers. So like the first time I ever knew what the arts were, or like what poetry was because like some white teacher used to love poetry, and she submitted my poem, stuff like that. It's just like, damn.
Your mom told you didn't remember that?
No, I remembered it. I was just telling my mom, because when my parents didn't realize like how big of a deal it was. So when I got the poem published, and I went to the auditorium to read it. I remember it was the first time my family drove downtown, and so we drove downtown, and we go inside this huge ass auditorium, and they're like, "Oh, are you here to read your poem?" And I'm like, "Yes." Everybody was wearing dresses. I was wearing a SpongeBob t-shirt. It was like a t-shirt.
That's such a statement.
Yeah. And like I remember the girl sitting beside me, she was like French, she did French immersion, and she was like wearing a white dress, her poem was in French, and I was just sitting there, SpongeBob t-shirt, jeans, I think like flip-flops, and I'm like,
I love that.
Didn't realize this was a thing. And then I went up and I read my poem, and then I came down and I saw my dad, and my dad's like, "You didn't say your last name." And I was like, I was nervous.
Man.
My dad's like, "You should have said he's like, always say your last name." And I'm like, "Sorry, Dad."
So after school was done, obviously the quarantine was still going on. What did you do to like occupy your time?
That's a great question. So I think once school wrapped up and I graduated, moving back home was definitely a bigger change than I had anticipated, because we were more restricted in what we could do. So in terms of occupying my time, I was very limited to what I can do inside the household, which was more just kind of like cleaning, redoing my room, kind of searching for jobs online or just even volunteer opportunities. At that time, I hadn't heard back about whether I would be starting school again in September, so it was kind of a place of limbo for me. I tried to work on a lot of my passion projects, working with like the nonprofit organizations that I've been working with for a while, and seeing what changes we needed to adapt to there as well.
So it sounds like you really tried to make like best of the situation by focusing on yourself. Do you feel like you changed a lot, or like the quarantine kind of forced you to change or think about things differently?
Yeah, 100%. It definitely forced me to, it really pushed me to change, and of course I view things a lot more differently now. I'd like to think that I view it with more of a holistic perspective, as kind of cliche as that sounds, but because no one really saw this like happening, right? Even when classes first were canceled, you know, like a lot of people, including myself, thought this would maybe last a few months, and then we can kind of resume normal routines, normal life, daily life. What really hit like around May, that was that, and a lot of like people have been using this phrase, and a lot of news headings have been using this phrase, which is, you know, like, we will never be able to go back to what we thought was normal before, or what we considered as normal before. So I think a lot of measures, including like social distancing, mask wearing, will be around for quite a while, for I would say like 1 to 2 years, with the very obvious safety measures. And I think COVID has also allowed for a lot of innovative measures just to protect the public, and just general safety health measures, right? Like not having too many people in a crowded space, which I think, you know, even if COVID did not occur, it's still more easy to transfer like viruses and things like that, even just like the common flu. And I'm a type of person who doesn't like crowded places, so I actually prefer that. But it has also kind of encouraged me and pushed me to think about things in the near future as well. I've been a long-term planner for as long as I can remember. It's been like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. But I think COVID has really changed that. So I'm not only a long-term planner, but also like a short-term planner. So like, what do I want to do, you know, before I start school? What do I want to achieve in my first year? Yo, a lot of those remind me of chives.
Of course they do.
They look like big chives.
Are you hungry?
Just everything reminds me of food, eh? Makes me sound like this.
As you said previously, you said we've never seen anything like this. Not getting too spiritual, but do you feel like there's a larger lesson in all of this for everyone?
Yeah, I think, I'm not a very spiritual person, but I think transparency 100% is necessary. So I think that is probably the biggest lesson I would take away from COVID. A lot of, like, it got to the point it got, and it spread so far and wide because of a lack of transparency between, you know, certain governments and between certain IOs, so international organizations, and it kind of got to a point where they had to say, like, no, like, now they pushed it so far, and it was to the point where if they didn't do anything else, like everyone would be fucked. So I think transparency number one is the biggest takeaway from this.
See, Sarah Lynn, we're not doomed. In the great grand scheme of things, we're just tiny specks that will one day be forgotten. So it doesn't matter what we did in the past or how we'll be remembered. The only thing that matters is right now, this moment, this one spectacular moment we are sharing together. Right, Sarah Lynn? Sarah Lynn?
Take it all from me.